Hey, welcome to another video. So today we're going to be going into the abilities of Darth Maul, but before we begin, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, link is in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. So, in the early stages of his training, being personally tutored by Darth Sidious, himself relentlessly, Darth Maul proved to be a very talented lightsaber duelist, quickly becoming capable enough to impress even Darth Plagueis with his abilities. By the time Maul became a true apprentice of Sidious, he was incredibly skilled in lightsaber combat, among the greatest duelists in the history of the Sith, capable of easily masquerading dozens of enemies and overpowering the most seasoned Jedi Masters. At age 17, he came incredibly close to besting Sidious during his test on Hypori, despite a long month of starvation, fatigue, and pain, while Sidious was in peak condition upon arrival. By 32 BBY, Sidious sincerely viewed his apprentice combat skills as being unmatched by any Jedi. Once he had been rehabilitated, Maul's fighting ability appeared to have been undiminished, besting Obi-Wan Kenobi and putting his brother Savage Opress in his place with as much discipline as he could muster. With his training focusing intensively on learning the Juyo variant of Form 7 from Sidious, Maul's inner aggression served to amplify his use of the form. He applied it in any duel and battle that he fought in, drawing heavily on volatile emotions and the dark side to gain the ability to overwhelm a single opponent with sheer tenacity. However, while he was already very proficient in Juyo, and being a lightsaber specialist good at utilizing his force powers, together with his acrobatic fighting style to allow for a more free-flowing fight, his use of the style was hampered by his great devotion to Form 7's physical focus, desiring a purely physical victory over his opponents, rather than using the higher Sith tradition of the Dunmuk tactic. However, by the time of the Clone Wars, Maul had outgrown this and fully mastered the form, which made him able to overwhelm even the defenses of a master of Surisu, such as Kenobi, in many of their altercations. Even while still faithfully desiring a victory purely from superior skill, Maul had achieved Dunmuk as he separated Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn on Naboo, silently taunting the Jedi Master, preying on the Padawan's sense of helplessness and feeding off of his anger. After being rehabilitated on Dathomir, Maul employed Dunmuk during his rematch with Kenobi above Raydonia. He later taunted Master Jude on Morhon, making him choose between facing Maul and serving the Marhuni from imminent destruction. In order to grasp Juyo, Maul would have naturally had to master many forms of lightsaber combat. He had superb skills in the form Nyman, allowing him to skillfully incorporate his force powers into his dueling style, whereas Jedi Battlemaster Sindralig believed that at least a decade of study was required to achieve mastery of Form 6. Maul did not seriously begin his lightsaber training until he was 15, which would suggest that he had wielded Nyman as well as Juyo at an astonishing rate. He had also shown proficiency in Ataru, as shown when dispatching a Trandoshan under Jabba's employ, in his escape from Cog Hive 7, and his specialization of acrobatics may come from training. This fighting style, along with Nyman, would enable him to overcome multiple opponents, as displayed by many times. Maul apparently had received a level of training in Makashi that was sufficient enough for Sidious to note the superb elegance and precision in the Zabrak's dueling ability. Even Darsha Asant could not help but notice the precision of his movements. He was capable of employing some one-handed strikes with the single blade of saber staff was left with throughout the Clone Wars, a function of Form 2. Despite aggression and offense being his prominent trait, Maul was highly capable of applying defensive measures in combat. He would have been considerably adept in Form 3 Surisu and Cheyenne, displaying the ability to skillfully detect and/or redirect incoming blaster fire with ease, whether with a saber staff or a single lightsaber. He was even strong and skilled enough to defend himself off the laser blast of a Jedi starfighter. In one instance, Maul utilized a reverse Cheyenne grip effectively to block and then counterattack Obi-Wan Kenobi. He later assumed a Surisu opening stance to begin his and Savage Opress's duel with Sidious, likely anticipating an attack from the reigning Dark Lord. When fighting multiple opponents, Maul extended the second blade of his lightsaber to form a saber staff, displaying superb skill with the weapon, as most of the era's Jedi had never faced such a weapon, or a practitioner skilled in its use. Maul sometimes used the relative nobility of his weapon's second blade to catch his opponents by surprise. Maul constructed the weapon himself, using ancient plans stored within one of the holocrons that the Sith still possessed. He had based his lightsaber design upon that of Darth Xana's weapon, which in turn had been a development on Exar Kun's original design. It is likely that this choice also came from his species' penchant for the zaboka, a similar weapon. His mastery of the saber staff was so complete he could spin it with just one hand without injuring himself, a trick he may have learned from Sidious. Maul was also equally capable of adapting his dueling style with his tactical knowledge, which allowed him to outmaneuver opponents he could not defeat through his martial prowess alone and beat such enemies to submission. For example, he had studied the plasma refinery complex in order to prepare for the fight with Jin and Kenobi. He then decided to lure the Jedi to this location, separate them, and use the laser gates to further secure his victory. This would imply an unusual display of Sokan, using the terrain to one's advantage in a lightsaber fight. Maul showed a fair amount of skill at applying mounted lightsaber combat, though he very rarely employed it. All of the known examples involved him riding a speeder against one or more opponents, 2 Black Sun sentries, a lone Bartok assassin, Anun Bandera, CSF officers, and portions of Boscan's Gungan army, which he was able to often win or at least engage for a fair amount of time. Maul had received extensive training in Jar-Kai, and quickly developed sufficient skill that even Darth Plagueis openly acknowledged him as being a master of the art. Although Maul rarely applied it, having come to view dual-blade combat as predictable, his mastery of it, having completed his training under Sidious, had greatly grown. His dueling skills were displayed by how he, alongside Savage, were able to make Sidious draw both of his swords for the first time. He and his brother fought considerably well, evening much of the fight, but they were eventually separated. Even alone, Maul proved a difficult challenge to Sidious, taking up both his lightsaber and the darksaber of Pre Vizsla against his former master, who was also wielding dual blades. Maul displayed such mastery over Jar-Kai that he was able to almost fight on par with Sidious, matching him blow to blow and kick for kick. He pressured Sidious into a blade lock, which, even if only for a brief moment, forced the Sith onto his back foot. However, Maul was ultimately bested by his former master, who was eventually able to overwhelm him and force Maul's lightsabers apart once the hilts were within close proximity to Sidious' blades. Regardless, it must be noted that Maul put up a far more ferocious fight than Savage against Sidious, and he did manage to avoid being killed by his own blades when the Dark Lord pushed him back on the blade lock. Maul's proficiency in lightsaber combat was later shown when his resurrected form was pitted against his successor, Darth Vader, on Kalakar 6. The 3 prophets of the dark side observed that Maul and Vader appeared evenly matched in terms of skill, but Maul bypassed Vader's defenses, punching, kicking, and even wounding him in a few places, whereas Vader could only keep up with the Zabrak. Once Vader cut off the saber staff, Maul used the still-functioning components to quickly gain the upper hand. While Vader had faced highly skilled dual-bladed fighters in the past, these experiences apparently did not prepare him for the confrontation with one of Maul's caliber. In the end, Maul was proven to be the superior swordsman and martial artist, and Vader only emerged alive while applying a risky maneuver to deal Maul a critical blow. Maul was also extremely skilled in hand-to-hand combat. He was highly skillful in the fighting style of Teräs Käsi, along with other deadly forms of martial arts he had learned from Sidious and his time in the Osiris Academy. The latter tutelage, in which he had a master fighter at age 13. He displayed outstanding skill in combining unarmed combat prowess with his lightsaber sequence, as shown repeatedly by how he managed to easily hit his opponents while engaged in close combat, even if they were expert duelists. This could also be applied with Ataru, allowing him to use his whole body as a weapon. He even landed a kick on Darth Sidious that forced him back. Using hand-to-hand combat, he outmatched Pre Vizsla even when he was armed without needing his lightsaber. From the day Maul was born, his mother, Seneca, felt that the Force was strong in him. Even Darth Sidious was impressed by the infant's strength in the Force, enough that he chose to keep him as his apprentice. Trained under Darth Sidious himself relentlessly, Maul honed his abilities and became a very powerful Force adept. However, while Sidious acknowledged Maul's strength, he underestimated just how strong Maul was. It was only after 12 years after Naboo that Sidious received news of Maul's remarkable survival, which was enabled by Maul's strength in the dark side, which was believed to have been strong enough to keep him alive despite being cut in half due to his immense rage and hatred augmenting his power. Kenobi acknowledged that Maul's knowledge and power of the dark side was great enough to have allowed him to survive his defeat, and that Maul himself believed it was the training he received under Sidious that allowed him to remain alive. Maul was acknowledged for having become more powerful in the Force after his resurrection by all of his enemies. And even Sidious was impressed enough that he believed that with the level of increase Maul had acquired, which only continued to grow, his former apprentice power may eventually reach levels that rivaled his own if left unchecked. Maul was highly proficient and powerful in many forms of telekinesis, capable of combining Force grip and Force choke together with devastating effect, as shown by how easily he broke Hath Munkar in his interrogation, and was able to activate a set of door controls beneath him with a flung piece of a wrecked droideka during his duel on Naboo. When he felt it necessary, he could telekinetically pull weapons away from multiple opponents before finishing them off with his lightsaber. After his resurrection during the Clone Wars, Maul's telekinetic prowess continued to grow to a considerable level, capable of performing delicate and remarkable feats such as pulling a section of the wall on Morjone upon his pursuers, pulling a several-ton Eta-class shuttle off a hill to trap Kenobi and Hondo's pirates, subtly activating the control panel in his brother's carbonate block in order to simultaneously free and allow a press to impale Jedi Master Salmara in the back, as well as even force-pushing Sidious himself to the wall during their duel when he was off guard. Maul became more proficient with Force choke to the point that he was capable of seemingly choking his foes while engaged in lightsaber combat, and even using it in conjunction with telekinesis, with his proficiency allowing him to blast Obi-Wan Kenobi away at one point, as well as choke him to unconsciousness when he was dizzy despite Kenobi's considerable strength in the Force. He also easily choked a Faline without even looking, and brutally twisted his head 180 degrees. Maul was able to keep Satine Kryze in a Force choke, while not even looking, and pulled her to the range of his lightsaber to kill her, which was the draw closer maneuver, a Nyman technique enabling one to use the Force to bring an opponent within saber range. Maul was able to stop Tristan's heart at a level that slowly killed him. He also became considerably adept at Force Crush, perfecting his combination of it and telekinesis. He also had a considerable amount of skill with the saber throw technique, which he used to kill a Jedi Master on one occasion. Occasionally, given his Nyman training, Maul would add Force-based attacks into his lightsaber sequences. He wouldn't hesitate to use a Force push or a Force grip on foes such as Kenobi if given the chance. Another example was his duel with Darsha Asant. Maul was proficient with the use of Force speed, allowing him to move with blinding momentum. In fact, he could run up to 30 meters per second. His speed was such that even Darth Plagueis himself was astounded by it when he observed Maul during one of the latter's training sessions. Despite Plagueis' assumptions to the contrary, having mastered the Quaitek meditation, Maul could effectively hide his Force signature, even while in close proximity to the Jedi Temple. He was able to use the mind trick, especially when working undercover, and once compelled a guard into committing suicide by having him blow up a bomb, killing himself and a large group of his fellow soldiers stationed at the mines on Morjone. His telepathy was so advanced that he could invade the mind of another to seek information. He was capable of using Force Sight to enhance his senses. He could utilize Battle Mind and Force Rage to increase his fighting form. MAUL also demonstrated a resistance to Force Lightning, shrugging off a barrage unleashed by the Night Sister Michaela, who was hunting for Alexei Garen. This ability was only effective to a point, however, as Darth Sidious was perfectly capable of torturing MAUL with Force Lightning. MAUL was skilled in combining Force talents with mechanics. In a secret facility on Coruscant, MAUL constructed much of the gear and gadgets he used on his missions, including his signature speeder bike Bloodfin and the Dark Eye Seeker droids. Using the Force skill Mecha Daru, the Zabrak modified the protocol droid C-3PX into an assassin droid to guard his ship. MAUL eventually learned a technique similar to one spell used by Darth Zana, a powerful Sith sorceress within the Rule of Two. When he came across the bodyguard of Viggo Naris, who attempted to read his mind in order to gain answers, the Zabrak unleashed his spell. The Itochi expressed horror at seeing how much darkness that he collapsed, reduced to a silent and vegetative state. MAUL was also capable of unleashing a powerful Force scream that he could control to a remarkable degree, as shown by how he merely managed to keep himself from letting out a roar after accidentally cutting himself in the barracks at the Osiris Academy. Almost 2 decades later, he let out a roar across the canyons moments after his reconstruction, and he also used Force Scream against Ventress and Kenobi. So what do you guys think of the abilities of Darth Maul? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, link is in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.